Greetings. Hello. Howdy. How you doing? Hey, what's up? No, we're not starting right away. I'm actually going to shuffle these. I hope that you're having a good day. It is morning time for me, but whatever time it is for you, I hope that you are enjoying yourself, that you are in a positive energy, that you're in your light, that you're feeling grateful for all of the things that you have, that you're recognizing how blessed you are, and that you are open to doing the works that you are called to, and that you have the strength and wisdom and perseverance to thrive in those things. Whatever it is that you are called to, that you hear that call, that you accept it, that you trust, that you embrace the unknown. It's a big power of wearing black. Black is not actually a color, but it is my favorite color for the fact that it is my power color. It's a void, and it is a constant reminder of embracing the void. That's why I like to wear it. I like to have it around things that are black. Resonate very deeply with me because it's like a mirror, right? The Black Mirror TV show was awful. Great, but awful. Well written, but terrible. It's not like that. Like a scrying mirror, but in the way that you get to actually see into yourself and see past yourself and see what's going on below that surface. Okay, we're starting off with a weird spread. And it's giving me weird vibes. And that's probably because I'm talking about fucking black mirrors and looking beneath the surface. So, what does this mean? Okay, well, the original card that came out is the Ace of Pentacles. This is at the top of our reading. So we're talking about a sense of abundance. There is a card that came out face down and sideways, which is my transition into these feelings, which I think are actually, I'm going to have to get clarifications for them. Okay, so I'm going to keep that card face down for right now. I don't, if it's helpful for you to be able to see how I have it set up. I'm going to keep it face down for right now because this is in reference to there being a sort of blockage to your abundance, to one's abundance rather. It is mental. I can already feel that I have not looked at this card, but it's in reference to a mental, spiritual, emotional blockage more than necessarily a physical one. There is a physical connotation to it because there's work that needs to be done, but there's a specific concept. There's a specific mindset. It's interesting that it said Pacific. There's a specific mindset that is not helpful and that needs to be released. It needs to be recognized and then released. You cannot properly release things without recognizing them, because how the fuck do you know what it is that you're actually getting rid of, and how do you know that you're getting rid of all of it, and that you're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater if you don't know what it is that you're looking at and that you're dealing with, right? So it's very important to know things by name. What I was thinking about just prior to starting this reading, I was already considering starting it, but what I started to think about was the concept of, which I've talked about before too, but like being able to consider one reality, one perspective, one not just circumstance, but like realm, while also being able to consider one that's separate and potentially even in opposition to it, without identifying by either fully, in order to find that balance in between. And being able to, so if I've already mastered a specific concept, emotion, spiritual path, even if I haven't like mastered it, or if I have, if there's one specific like line of thinking that I have confidence in, and then there's another line of thinking that is essential, or at least as far as I can tell, or as far as I have told thus far, in opposition to it, and I'm being expected to work within that mindset. How can I put this in a better perspective? Okay. I mean, it's kind of like really simple. It's kind of just like, I'm a caregiver naturally. That's something that I've always done because I was taught to just care about other people more than myself. So that came naturally. When I started to become a caregiver for an actual job, it came naturally for me. It took time for me to actually master the capacity to be able to actually care for myself while caring for others in order to care for others the best, and how to set certain boundaries and what that care even required, and to figure out how to properly communicate and how to learn these different types of skills of different types of care for whatever it is that an individual needs at any given time. So there was a whole masterhood that took place when it came to caregiving for me, even though it was something that came naturally to me. And because it's something that came naturally to me, it was easier, really, for me to master that. But it still took a lot of time. It took a lot of work. It's not that it was actually easy. It just came more naturally, right? But then I started doing landscaping at one point. And that was in part, I'd done assembly. I'd done other jobs where it was not people-oriented, per se, where it wasn't like about customer service. It wasn't about catering to other people. It wasn't about sacrificing myself in those emotional, intellectual ways. I was looking for a more physical labor job in order to move away from those things. But that was not something, obviously, that that wasn't something that came naturally to me. It was something that I desired in my own experience, and it was a skill that I wanted to learn and was very passionate about learning. So that was my drive, but it wasn't this natural proclivity, right? And so what that required of me was to kind of first utilize what I already knew when it came to caregiving and when it came to skill building in that way, but I had to do it in a very like metaphorical sense. I had to do it in a very broad sense. I had to take, these concepts that I had learned, and like, obviously I'm not applying, skilled nursing tasks into my landscaping job. However, the broader I could conceive of the skills I already had, the easier it was for me to transmute them into what I was doing for landscaping. And I've done this for every job, every time that I've worked something kind of completely out of my realm of comfort. You know, and so, but that's what it requires. And then on top of doing that, what you're kind of going to do naturally is go off of your own experience and all of the skills you already have. I also had to be completely willing to start from the bottom up and to be willing to ask the right questions or to pay attention to the right things to learn what that even meant and what that even looked like, because I had no idea where to even begin. And to recognize that this was not something that was a natural given skill. It wasn't something that I had any experience in. And to, you know, so I really had to put on like my thinking cap, and I really had to put on my, you know, put off any airs of arrogance. I had to be completely humble to learn properly and completely willing to learn this new thing. And, you know, I was working at a veteran-owned company with a bunch of ex-military men or even current military men who have very sophisticated training to do what they do. And so certain skills do come naturally for them when it comes to when it comes to landscaping, right? There were certain skills that like they just, you know, kind of innately knew because it went in line with kind of the things that they'd already learned. I haven't been in the military, although I grew up with different people that have been. So I understood those concepts. I wasn't trained in them myself, so I really had to pay attention. And but I also had to maintain this sense of confidence. I would have never made it. Like the first week of work was a bitch, but they were also giving me all of the bitch work, and they were not letting me slack whatsoever. Like they were holding me to the highest standard, and giving me more than what was even would be expected of me on a day-to-day basis. They were giving me the brunt of everything in order to ensure that I could actually do the job at hand. You know, it might not always be like this, but there are times that it is, and we need to know that you can keep up so that we're not having to take our time and space and take away from the job that we're doing just to make sure that you can do this, because there's better candidates out there than people like that, right? So like you have to prove yourself. And the first week was like, it was particularly rough too because it was in the hottest part of summer, so it was like 100-degree weather. And because I was just starting to work and I didn't have any savings or anything like that, I also didn't have money for like, you know, I was pretty much just drinking water all day. I didn't have any snacks. I didn't have any food. I really was kind of I was eating once a day, and it was once I got home because that's all that I could afford at the time. So that first week was a bitch because I wasn't properly conditioned physically, but I also wasn't like fully prepared physically either, right? That's fine though. I'm capable. I'm a strong individual. I can still accomplish what I need to and move into a space of being able to get on top of things. I'm quite used to being the underdog and to not having all of the right tools to begin with and kind of gaining access to them as I go along. That faking till you make it, right? So I did. And I was very proud of myself, and my coworkers and my boss were very proud of me too for the work that I was able to prove that I could do. But it was definitely something outside of my element. And ultimately, I loved that job. I particularly loved the company that I worked for. I particularly loved my boss and my coworkers and the brotherhood that we had. That sense of camaraderie and fraternity is extremely important to me. It's extremely valuable to me. It's something that I was raised with that I had to move away from in my estrangement with my family. And so it's something that I kind of, you know, I don't feel at a loss in a sense of like being in some lack mentality about it. I'm completely capable as an individual, but it is something that I like to have in my life, and I benefit greatly from. But at the same time, the work in of itself wasn't ultimately something that caters to my truest person. If the type of work that we were doing in landscaping was sustainable gardening, and, you know, every once in a while we would have jobs for clients that cared about those types of things, and we would absolutely cater to that. And my boss was very good about educating himself to know how to offer the most sustainable things. But very often, you know, we're planting 7 different trees that are not going to survive where we're being forced to plant them, despite how much we've tried to explain those things, because this person just wants to spend an ass load of money on these very specific types of trees, and they want them in very specific places because they have a visual of what they want everything to look like. And so we do it, but like they're well aware that like chances are this isn't actually going to be sustainable ultimately. And they're fine with that because they have the money to redo it again and again and again, or to change it whenever they want to change it, right? And so we had a lot of clients that were like that too, where like it wasn't about sustainability, it wasn't about protecting the environment, it wasn't about catering to, you know, more sustainable communities. It was just about, I have money I want to spend, I have a way I want my lawn to look and feel, and we were the people to do the job for them. That's often what it looks like. And you kind of, it's hard for me because I have high standards, but that's why I was so thankful for my boss too, because my boss often had higher standards than I did in a lot of things, but was willing to compromise in those ways that I wouldn't have been as willing to compromise, at least at the time. And he was able to show me the benefit of those things too, because ultimately, I mean, that's part of, you can't, again, like I said in my last video, like you can't control people. You can't control people. You have to let people be free to make those choices, even if you can try your hardest to convince them otherwise, you know, but people are still free to make their own choices. And if you're in a specific role or position, it's still your task to do those things in order to fulfill that position. And, you know, if you can't do that, then that's not the position for you, right? And learning where to compromise. Well, we're talking about military men, so it comes very naturally for them to put themselves in positions that would be compromising, that they're willing to commit to and, you know, take seriously and, you know, what's the word? Like succeed in efficiently, like to actually complete efficiently. Because, you know, for the sake of the leadership, essentially, right? Whatever the leadership is. And they're very good about understanding those types of roles. And so I learned a lot in that position about the way that those things work and why they work that way, and how that's a large aspect of building sustainability. It can't just be a free-for-all. It can't just be utter chaos all the time. Everybody can't be trusted to make their own decisions. And, you know, in a job like that, money is power. It ultimately comes down to, like, you're not going to refuse a multi-million-dollar job or whatever. You know, if it's paying the bills, you're going to do it, as long as it is something that you can do well, that can reflect well on the company in that degree. And you have to be able to separate yourself from, you know, some people might have something to say about it, like landscaping in general, you know, like I don't, as much as it was fun using those high-powered mowers and, you know, like high-powered tools, you know, they all create sound pollution. You're literally like running over frogs and mice and stuff like that, baby rabbits and stuff, like the weed whacking and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of things about it that I don't morally support. But at the same time, when it comes to building up a business, it wasn't as much, you have to put some of those things on the line. So that's why I've always been so hard pressed about any type of career or anything like that. That is right here, like that has been my, I don't even know what this card is yet, but that has been my blockage, has been this moral standard And I'm coming to an understanding now that you have to be able to see things from both sides. You can't just be, the light is to be shed on the darkness. The purpose of the light is to reveal what is hidden, and to guide what was lost, and to bring life to what was otherwise asleep or dead. But there is a contrast. If it was all light, it wouldn't be the light, it would just be all there is. You wouldn't even have a thought of it. So there has to be this capacity to be able to conceive of multiple things and to even move in the direction of things that seem oppositional to your own standard in order to maintain balance and in order to gain certain skills and in order to enact a larger scale sustainability. Ultimately, it is important to recognize the individual, but it's not just the aspect of the individual that is responsible for sustainability. It's the work of the individual as a whole, right? Every individual in their capacity to be self-actualized and their capacity to be self-sustaining. And so there's a lot that goes into that. And so I was considering, being able to maintain my own personal standard and belief, while also supporting what needs to be done. It's something that I learned in the 12-step program, because I went there at the time as a Christian and was told that it wasn't, within the community, it wasn't my role to appeal to Christian standard. That was my personal highest power at the time. And anybody could have a different highest power, but as long as we were all serving our personal highest power, we were all still in this brotherhood. And that was very important to learn, just to be able to see people as they are and to recognize that the work that we're all doing as individuals is equally as important. No one is more important than the other, but all very different, and it's easy to judge certain things that you don't relate to. But that especially when you're in those fraternities, like when you're in, like when I was in this group of men while I was working landscaping, it would not be helpful to the job and to the camaraderie we're building and to the team building. I'm very big on team building. It would not be helpful to that at all to have these personal judgments over, this guy's life or this guy's wife or how this guy feels about some whatever. There was a bigger task at hand that we were all committed to. And that's what built that sense of camaraderie. So that was also accessible in the 12-step program, where it was ultimately we all had an end goal and we were all trying to help each other for that. So, my sins are just as, easy to judge as anybody else's. Obviously, in my 12-step program, I was in a sex addiction 12-step program. So, and I was at Sex Addicts Anonymous for my porn addiction. There were other people there for their porn addiction, but there were also people there for different promiscuity, different just struggles with sex addiction. It looks a lot of different ways. And as the only woman there when I initially first started, and especially as being younger than most of the people that were there, I had a privilege that they didn't innately come in with. But I also had a disadvantage that way for the fact that there was all these preconceived notions about me to begin with. There was a standard that I was expected to uphold that they weren't expected to uphold. There was also that dynamic of energy influence of you know, most of those men, not all of them, but most of those men were struggling with their lack of discipline with women, or with their pornographic view of women. So being a woman kind of forced them to confront those things head on. And so there was also like a lot of manipulation and stuff that I kind of had to work through. And I think all of that was to be expected, and I handled myself very well, but all of those things are important to consider, you know, and being the only woman in male-dominated spaces is definitely, I mean, I grew up with brothers. I grew up being raised by misogynists. I grew up, like, in a very male-dominated culture, you know, in the churches and stuff that we went to. And so it comes naturally to me to take a sense of responsibility for myself as a woman within that sense of fraternity. And, you know, that's something that I feel extremely blessed to have experienced and to have learned, because I see, especially as a woman, I see so many women that, like, don't get it. They've been raised by women, and they've been raised by women that are embittered against men. So, like, they're at a loss, really. They don't know themselves. They don't know how to know themselves. And they're not even trying to find out, really, more or less. They're trying to make demands as to what everybody else should be expected to do to fill that void for them. You know, and so that's a big part of, like, I was talking originally about, like, this concept of the void and this concept of being able to embrace the unknown. For me, that came through being the only female in male-dominated spaces. And I consider that having, like, been extremely helpful. And I do consider it a privilege that I've received. Although I never felt that way growing up. It definitely felt like a disadvantage, and I was definitely in a victim mentality about it for a long time. But I've moved out of that to the point, but it also built, like, the stubbornness in me, right? So that's, I don't know where all that came from. Came from a lot, I mean, I know where it came from, but, okay, so I've already explained, I tend to do this a lot because I just can't stop talking, but what I just explained is what is going to be here in the cards. I haven't necessarily looked at these cards and read them. I have not read them yet. So I'll read them, but that's the premise for what it is that we're talking about. We have the Nine of Wands in the upright, the Knight of Cups in the upright, the Hermit in the upright, and the Eight of Swords in the upright. Okay, so the sense of, I have my skills and I'm feeling insecure for the fact that there's all these other skills that are not mine yet that I'm going to have to essentially learn. I'm going to have to be a part of. I'm going to have to work these things out. But this is kind of a reflection of a space of general discomfort and insecurity and uncertainty. But we move forward with the Knight of Cups in the sense that we are in control of our emotions and that we are willing to do what is necessary in order to properly learn how to conduct ourselves and how to acquire those skills to become wise, in order that we can, move with confidence through, these wands here. In this one, you're holding a wand, but there's 8 wands standing in this. There's 8 swords, and you're bound and blind. And it's about being able to have the confidence to do that, to get there. And as I was communicating this, I started randomly shuffling as I started talking about these concepts. And the Emperor came out in reverse. And I just kind of put it off to the side. That is the reflection of these things as well. You know, the reason that there is this insecurity to begin with, and that these steps are necessary, is because our Emperor is in reverse. We're lacking that confidence because we're lacking those skills, which is fine because there's a confidence that we're building. I know this isn't normally, I think, a lot of the way people read it, a sign of confidence, but for me, that's how I always see it. The Eight of Swords is a sign of stepping into your own true confidence, because you don't need your physical skills, your physical sight in order to be able to do your greatest work. The Hermit is a great reflection of that power. And, you know, both of these are like moving into one another, the way that I have them set. So it's like taking your emotions, the ones that you are secure with, in order to drive forward with them. You know, that level of confidence, that level of security in what you do have, and taking your inner wisdom and your, you know, this is the external, this is the internal, and being able to move them into each other in order to turn what is insecurity into a sense of confidence. And the blockage, now I'm going to talk about, this is all leading up to our divine abundance, right? It's different for each individual. And for some people, it's one large sum of, you know, abundance. It's like having a very happy family that's secure and healthy, having a healthy partnership, having the job that you always wanted and having it be secure and having it meet all of your needs and having it be something that you're happy to go to every day and do every day. Being able to live where it is that you want to live and see what it is that you want to see every day and feel the ways that you want to feel every day. Having all of the money that you would ever need in order to be able to sustain all of the different things that you want to be able to do with your life, and all the different works that you're trying to do to be able to fund those things. It looks different for every individual. It can be a mix of those things. It could be just one of those things. But that's what we're talking about, is this sense of divine abundance. What leads to the insecurity? What leads ultimately to the Emperor being in reverse? The Five of Wands on its side. The Five of Wands is, you know, represented by a whole bunch of boys playing with sticks, fighting each other with sticks, right? It on its side, it's this sense of, like I said, like, we're not nitpicking each other. We're building a sense of fraternity. It's a sense of fraternity. It's not that, you know, you're not changing. If it were on the reverse, it would be like going to war with one another, side by side, you know, against a common enemy. It's not that mindset. But it's also not, you know, in the upright where the mindset is like, we're playing a game and we're learning with each other, and we're playing a game together. So it's not as lighthearted, nor is it as serious. It's a balance between the two. It is a learning curve. It's a constant process. It's, you know, like I said, like in the 12-step program, nobody knew better than anybody else. Because although we had one definitive end goal, every different individual was bringing in their own experience. And it was truly on the individual experience and the individual's capacity to alchemize their own experience that the goal could be reached. That was it. You know, it wasn't like I can sit here and keep you from watching the weird porn that you watch, or wanting to cheat on your wife, or wanting to touch kids. Whatever the issue was for the individual, it was on them to be willing to communicate those things to their brothers, to be willing to be held accountable to those things in that way, to maintain respect for the anonymity of the rest of the fraternity and to do the work necessary to take those steps necessary to reach their highest goal. You know, and I did not complete the program. I got very caught up on the higher power issue at the time and made excuses. Because I was rededicating myself to the church at the time as a Christian. But very shortly thereafter, I realized that I wasn't a Christian at all. So it was kind of like my last like push and drive, being like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do what I believe I'm supposed to do in order to make this work and in order to embrace this. And in doing that work, realized that that just simply wasn't what was meant for me. But I wasn't fully willing to accept that or admit that at the time, and instead was making excuses. This is back 15 years ago. You know, and so, but because I started the program, because I started these steps, and really did take it seriously up until that point, the issue was mostly just that this one step I got stuck on was very big. It was very big for me. I wasn't, you know, I had progressed very quickly, and then I was stuck on this one step, and it felt degrading, and it felt disheartening, and I let that get the best of me. I'm no longer in that position anymore. I'm willing to do the work now, and I've gone through now in the last 15 years that process on my own in order to accomplish where I've gotten. Ultimately, the end goal was to not abuse porn, and not to abuse myself and my sexuality through my tendencies, and to have a healthy sexuality. I have one step left before I've completely mastered that, in as far as the program is concerned, but there's also multiple different ways of maturing the steps that I've already taken and kind of going beyond that to where I really want to take it. Because at the beginning, all that I had seen for myself was to be able to have the capacity of maintaining of not being completely addicted to porn, compulsively having to watch it, compulsively masturbating all the time, and to be in control of that level of my sexuality, and also to be able to maintain a healthy monogamous relationship. But in my time, I've learned that I have the capacity for those things, but that isn't necessarily my end goal, right? That's the part of the process. So, you know, that's something, I mean, that's the point of having a fraternity and having a brotherhood as well, in those senses. Like, the whole point of the camaraderie that you build in a 12-step program is to have a support system that holds you accountable, so that you can be free to change your goals on a personal level while still remaining committed to the end goal, and to kind of keep you in line with what that is and what that looks like, so that you're not just running willy-nilly everywhere trying to figure it out, right? Again, I struggled in a 12-step program for sex addiction, being the only female. I had been there for about 4 months when another female had shown up. But it was still, well, and even then, men, now you have 2 women, and now it's a competition. We weren't there trying to get laid, at least not me and that female. We were there, and neither were the men up until women had shown up, right? Well, there were a couple men that were there kind of, I think, hoping that they could exploit each other. There was there was a couple dudes that were court ordered, and they weren't happy about it. And one of them, you know, was kind of looking, he was kind of like the one, you know, well, there were two of them that, you know, were kind of like the ones that at an AA meeting are like, let's go to the bar after this sort of deal, right? And that happens, and everybody's free to, I mean, they were court ordered to be there, but in that same way, they were still free to make the decisions that they were making within that group. And that's how those things need to be in order to maintain the integrity of those groups and the freedom within those groups, right? So you can't dictate those things. And obviously there's certain boundaries that, you know, if somebody's continually crossing and not being willing to be held accountable, they're not taking the program seriously. So they don't need to be there. But ultimately, you can't tell people how to take things seriously or what that looks like, right? And you have to give people the time to kind of work those things out. And if they keep coming back, it works if you work it, right? So, you know, that's just how those things work. But there's a sense of, there's an important sense of, you know, I use the words brotherhood and fraternity mostly just because I'm myself. Like I said, I was raised with brothers. I was raised by misogynists. I was raised with that sense of brotherhood. What that means to me is something deeply spiritual. What a fraternity means to me is something deeply spiritual. I haven't been initiated into groups of women. The times that I have kind of been like honorarily initiated just by being a woman that those women enjoyed for a time. But women don't tend to, I prefer to use masculine terms because in my experience, my personal experience, I have a lot of issues with women. They don't tend to take their roles as seriously. They don't, you know, fraternizing to them is like goofing off. It's not letting off steam. Like, it's not like this, like, coming from a buildup of taking constant responsibility and then needing a little break in order to just goof off with your pals. It's like a lighthearted, like, girls just want to have fun. You know what I mean? And it's just like, all of this is like, oh, this is so fun and so silly. And I like things to be very aesthetic. And I like to have a sense of entitlement. And that's why, you know, we have these titles and we have these levels and we have all these different things that we do. And it becomes very competitive when that is like the opposite of what is necessary for a strong and sustainable group, right? Or organization. So I think that brotherhood and fraternity and those types of words better define what I'm getting at when I talk about these things. That's why I use those terms. And I know that a lot of women don't like that. A lot of women don't like me. I don't like a lot of women. So I don't really have a problem with it, to be honest. The women that I do get along with and that I'm close with, like, they get it. They're not offended by me saying those things. They aren't in this constant victim mentality, but most women are. Even powerful women, even very empowered women, are still in this victim mentality. And, like, I get it. I think it's just kind of comes with the territory of having multiple penetrable holes. But, you know, and also just being like the body that nurtures something to birth. And, like, you know, there's all these different aspects of being soft and being more vulnerable. But on a spiritual level, those things take on different connotations. And I have a womb. I struggle with my maternal instincts for sure. I do tend to cater more to the masculine just because that's the way that I was raised. But I still have those qualities and I take them seriously and I'm growing to develop them, you know, more and more seriously. But how I keep those things in check, and how I make the most of those things, and how I maintain my sense of standard and ability and nobility is by adhering to the masculine. How does the Tao put it? That you always recognize the masculine but keep to the feminine. And that is what I do naturally. So much of the Tao, when I read it, like it makes sense to me because it's something I'm already implementing in my day-to-day, and in my psychology. I cater to certain standards with the awareness. I just am aware of the reason that things are set the way that they're set and why. And I care very much to honor those things, not disrespect them. When you're in that victim mentality, especially as a woman, it's like, oh, well, we live in a patriarchy, so now I have to, make a mess of absolutely everything, and everything has to be chaos, and I have to demand all of these different things revolve around me because that's what equality looks like. And I just don't agree. I don't agree. I found myself to be equal with everyone, anyone, everything, anywhere by embracing a submission, a humility, willingness to work. And I just don't see that so much with women. And so I do feel like part of plus I like I said, I was raised Christian and stuff. In the Bible, everything is in the masculine. Everything's referred to the man first. And I still take those things in a personal way. Not just because of my own gender identity either, but I think that helps. Has catered to it. But yeah, there's a lot to be said about the reason that things are the way that they are and structured that way, and the importance of that thing, the importance of that. The pyramid in the upright position holds a very specific power for the fact that that's what is relevant in nature. There's a reason that the pyramids, the great pyramids that we see all over the world aren't built with the point on the ground and the base at the largest part of them at the top. And that's because it would be unstable that way. The importance of the feminine is to balance out in a emotional and spiritual and intellectual way what is already grounded as the masculine. That's where those concepts come from. When the Bible talks about women being made for men, it's not, the Bible's all a metaphor. It's not actually trying to state that historically the chicken came before the egg sort of deal. It's not like that. It's that one is given to the other for a very specific purpose, and that in embracing that concept, you will fall into proper alignment with your highest capacity and power based on what it is that you're working with. You have to be willing to embrace what it is that you're working with. You cannot be in denial of yourself. And, that's why my views are the way that they are. Gender identity can be anything. You can identify as whatever you want, and I'm okay with that, and I will respect that. I will honor it. I will call you whatever it is that you identify by. I totally get it. But don't deny yourself, and don't convince yourself that external means are going to fulfill internal voids, right? At the same time, it is about those things. It is the external that fulfills the internal. But it has to come from a self-empowerment, otherwise it's toxic. I could be with any dick and have sex with any dude, right? Anybody that has a penis I could have sex with, and it would do something for me. But it's not necessarily going to be something good if we're not both in a proper empowerment where we're exchanging the right energy. What is within the alignment with both of our highest power, which is why I don't have sex as often as I would want to. If I were having sex as often as I felt like having sex, if I were engaged in sexuality as often as I wanted to, there would be very few men whose dicks I hadn't sucked. And I would be having sex every day with at least one man. And probably not the same, man every day. Like, if I were given to those types of things. But I hold myself to a certain standard because I'm aware of my role in this world and how that would not benefit anything. That doesn't actually benefit anything. Hell, I wouldn't even be coming half that time because I don't care about that. But like it doesn't. A man being able to release that way in a very casual, careless way doesn't ultimately serve him either. Every once in a while, that energy can be great. But for the most part, there is something so much greater to be had. And that is what I'm offering. And since I've taken control of that and since I've taken responsibility for that, to step into the control that was already given and predetermined, I have watched how not having sex with men has actually done far greater for them than having sex with them did. Now, there are men, and it's all like a karmic thing. There are men that I've been with that have greatly benefited from the sex that I had with them, or that have been moved to their karmic leveling up because of those things, and myself included, through those experiences, have also received that same sort of deal. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason things are the way that they are. And, I know that a lot of women in our ultra-feminist society don't agree with me about a lot of these things. But like, I'm explaining these things now where like, you might not like to hear it, but did you listen to the rest of anything that I said and why I said it? Because there's so much I've said that you couldn't disagree with. And if you were to look at it in light of what it is that I'm communicating, you would understand what it is that I'm getting at, and you would stop taking personal offense, because all you're doing by being personally offended by these things is proving my point. There's a reason things are the way they are, and I very much care to honor those things as such. So that's what's been missing, and I guess that's why I'm so passionate about it, because this is the in-between. This is what it takes in order to build what I'm truly trying to build, which isn't just my own wealth and material security, but it's a divine abundance. It is the most sustainable abundance. It's the thing that balances out the individual aspect and the communal aspect. The collective need versus the personal need. It is the balancer between all those things, and the provider for all of those things. And without a proper sense of fraternity, of a brotherhood, a sisterhood is great. It's something different. It's different. Pretty sure none of the girls in the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants remained friends in the end. They just had this little experience together. And that's also very valid. That it's valid for something different. But when we're talking about building something sustainable, the masculine is very important. It's such an interesting concept. Both are equally as important, but like I'm thinking about like the cup, like the cup in of itself, like the cup denotes the feminine, but it's upheld by the masculine. So there is this constant balance. You have to take them both together. You have to take them both together. I wish I could find. I wish that I had a I don't know, like an index sort of deal for my Tao Te Ching, so that it was, I could look up specific words. Like in the Bible, it has that. You can actually look up specific words and then find the verse that has that word in it. So that way you can find everything. Because it would be helpful to be able, the way I'm pretty sure that it says uphold the masculine but keep to the feminine. Also, this book was given to me, I think I mentioned in another video, by a friend who is an author, and he had it for years, and so he has different things highlighted in it that I've kind of chosen to ignore, because I receive different focal points out of it. But it might be, since it's already marked up, it might be worth me marking these things myself and getting into it more myself so that I can actually remember where these things are. Every once in a while, I do have a photographic memory, so every once in a while I can kind of remember what the page looks like, and then it's easier to find it, but I don't always pay attention, so I'm not always taking those snapshots in my head. If I do take a snapshot, it's somewhere in the catalog, and I'm able to find it, usually, depending on how ordered my memory is. That's why I have a good memory, is because I have taken the time to order it. Every once in a while I go in and have to reorder everything. Now that I'm thinking about it, I should probably do that again. It's never doesn't hurt anything. It always is helpful for me to recalibrate, reorganize. See, the same sort of concept where, like, I'm able to sit here and read while, I love that, that specific excerpt, 28, I'm able to read and talk at the same time. Not something I like do all the time, but you know, the same sort of thing is like learning to write upside down, or to read backwards and still have high comprehension. They are good skills. They're good skills to learn because they help you be able to comprehend things at a deeper level. I'm only halfway through, so I don't know if I'm actually going to get through this. If it doesn't show up soon, I'll probably just move ahead. I thought that I was close to it way back when, but then I didn't see it. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of remembering. I might have skipped it because I've been looking for it as a specific line in the verses, where now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking that it might be kind of mixed into the verse, where it's like not its own specific line. It's an interesting thing that I know we're getting away from right now in the modern world, is these concepts of the masculine and the feminine. I had a disagreement with a friend who is in her 60s. She's almost 70. She's a Democrat. She is extremely liberal, and she was arguing with me about my uses of the masculine and feminine. I was talking about how I was referring to them in the divine aspect, and that it's for each individual to determine for themselves their own identity. And she was trying to say that me using those terms at all is harmful to people's gender identity. And then I explained to her that I myself don't identify as particularly masculine or feminine. Well, okay, I do identify as particularly masculine, but I also identify as equally feminine. So, but because of differences of those things, you know, I was like, you know, she's a straight woman. So, I don't really feel like, if you aren't queer, you don't really, being an ally isn't arguing a queer person about what you think things should be. But that's something else. Something else. Is it really this far at the end though? I think I must have skipped it. Must have skipped it. Okay. Well, we went through the whole thing. I'm receiving texts, so I'm gonna go. I had a lot of weird stuff to say. I hope this was helpful. Yeah, you don't have to take everything at face value. Look deeper than that. Take everything with a grain of salt, you know, alchemize it yourself. That's the freedom that you have, and that's what you should be doing with anything that I say. Because what I say is coming from me personally, but it is for you to receive to yourself personally. And if it is something that doesn't apply, and it's something that's just incredibly triggering, then it's not for you. Or at least not right now, or in this space. So just let it alone, move on, worry about the things that are for you. Take only what resonates with you. If you can alchemize every single thing, wonderful. That would be great. That's what I would want. But if you can't, that's fine. That's totally fine. I ain't perfect. I ain't giving this shit perfectly. So make of it what you will. And I will see you in the next video.